And continuing on here at Locked on Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. The Ultimate NBA Mock Draft starts June 16th with over 50 insiders. Nothing equals the Ultimate NBA Mock Draft. The Locked on NBA Big Board Draft experts plus the Odyssey insiders. First pick is June 16th. Search the Ultimate NBA Mock Draft and follow now so you don't miss out on a single pick. Wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Google, check them out. Be sure to tune into the Ultimate NBA Mock Draft. Now, let's talk a little Tari Eason here, who is my favorite number one prospect for the Rockets at pick number 17. There are a number of mock drafts that have Tari Eason falling to the Houston Rockets at pick number 17, which ultimately I thought that the Rockets may have been, kind of forced into a position where if they were really interested in Tari Eason, having to possibly trade up to acquire him. But if he is on the board at 17 and the Rockets don't select him, I will be distraught because I'm incredibly excited by him and just his versatility at the NBA level, what he's going to be able to bring. I think he could very easily be a high-level difference maker type role player, and just his calling card is going to be defense at the NBA level. But truly, let's run through some of his numbers. So he's about 6'7" without shoes on, probably a little bit taller than that in shoes. So I'm just going to say a 6'8" frame in shoes, 7'2" wingspan. So he's got absurd physicals, weighs about 220 pounds. He's got the agility, the foot speed to stick with smaller, faster players. He's got the size and strength to deal with stronger, bigger players. I think it gets overblown quite a bit using the phrase can defend 1 through 5. Tari Eason can probably legitimately defend 1 through 5. Like he has the physical gifts to guard positions 1 through 5, which is, again, I think it gets used way too often. And across NBA players trying to decipher, oh yeah, this guy's an all NBA caliber defender because he can defend 1 through 5. I think Tari Eason has the physical tools to actually be able to accomplish that. He has a high motor, constantly hustling on the floor. He's a great on-ball defender, great when it comes to off-ball defense, probably one of the best off-ball defenders, just general defensive IQ awareness in his class. And then when you look at just his offensive side of things, he's a great interior scorer. He's able to get it done right at the rim, and he's a reliable three-point shooter. So we run through his numbers really quick. Averaged about 17 points per game, shot 37.1% from three, just under 7 rebounds per game, about 2 steals and 1 block per contest, constantly playing passing lanes, constantly getting steals, racking up blocks, just one of the best defenders in this draft class, and that is absolutely going to translate to the NBA level. And so you package that with a guy who's already got a relatively reliable three-point shot, and that makes him an incredibly enticing prospect for the Rockets at pick number 17. Now let's bring up his shot profile here because his shot profile is a little weird. Now again, great interior scorer, great right at the rim. Not so great in the mid-range. So when we look at his actual numbers, he shot 69% right at the rim. Nice. His mid-range numbers are pretty atrocious. And then we get out to his, like if we break down his mid-range numbers, let me just make this nice and simple for us. 32.1% from the mid-range, and then we go all the way out to three-point range where he was absolutely on fire from the top of the arc. That's where he did most of his damage. In fact, he did a majority of his three-point damage from above the break threes. He shot just 0% from the left corner and only 2 of 5 for 40% from the right corner, but very few attempts from either of the two respective corners. At the top of the key, he shot 48.3%, 14 of 29 attempts at the top of the key. From the right wing, shot 5 of 14 for just under 36%. And then from the left wing, he shot 30.5%, just 7 of 23 attempts from there, which brings us to our total three-point percentage of 37.1% for Tari Eason. Now, again, he's a guy, the mid-range doesn't exist for Tari Eason. Very unreliable mid-range shooter, but he's a guy that can get it done when you're finishing in and around the bucket, both by attacking off closeouts in the half court as well as operating in transition, right? He's a guy that can get the rebound, can kind of push the ball up in transition a little bit himself, can fill the lanes in transition and feast off of other guys kind of passing to him like a Jalen Green or a Kevin Porter Jr. or even a Paolo Banchero, possibly bringing the ball up the floor. Offensively, again, he's going to be able to space the floor. Offensively, he'll be able to feast off of those transition opportunities. He's got enough, I guess, ability, coordination with the basketball in his hands to kind of drive and get to the rim himself. His dribble is a little kind of wonky. Like, it's not the prettiest dribble ever, but it's effective, right? You put a bigger, stronger player on him to check him, and he's going to be faster than them at beating them off the dribble, getting to the rim. You put a smaller, quicker player on him, he utilizes his size and strength effectively enough to be able to overpower smaller guys. So much so that this is a kid who averaged a ton of free throws this past season, 5.6 free throw attempts in just 24 minutes of action. Basically one of the highest free throw rates in all of college basketball. He knows how to get to the rim, how to draw fouls, how to be effective in that regard. And he increased his shooting percentage to where you really like the fact that he's able to get to the free throw line. He shot 79% at the free throw line, as well as the 37% from three. So he's got a quality shot with him offensively. Again, this is a guy who's going to live and feast above the rim. He's a guy that you can, conceivably play at the 3, at the 4. He could play small ball 5. There's a lot of versatility to where you place him, because he's going to be, at least defensively, can guard almost any position on the floor. Offensively, he fills the exact need of a traditional 3-and-D type wing player, but he's got some legitimate size, can play some small ball 5, in a pinch if necessary, depending on a mismatch, or depending on a matchup, I should say. And then he's got a little bit more there where there's maybe some untapped offensive potential where, again, right now, a majority of his game is kind of as a slasher, not necessarily like a guy that is going to go ISO one-on-one, you give the ball to, and he's going to break down defenders on his own. But off the catch, right, have him stationed out of the three-point line, off the catch, attacking off closeouts, that kind of thing. And then feasting in transition is going to be mainly his offensive calling cards, at least right away. Now, when we look at the downsides to Tari Eason, I would say that at times, both defensively and offensively, he managed to foul out of 6 games at the college level, which is kind of absurd. Just shows that he's being aggressive. That's not necessarily a horrible thing. Very aggressive defender, very aggressive player on both sides of the basketball, but at times can be a little tunnel vision, can kind of, tuck his head down and just barrel through defenders. Not necessarily looking for the pass, looking for the right read, looking for the best way to finish. So I think at times he can be a little bit careless with the basketball, and maybe a little over-eager when it comes to trying to play make or facilitate for his teammates. Some bad passes, some bad decision-making at times offensively with the ball in his hands. But I think he's a guy, again, you put him in the right role, he'll understand how to fulfill that role offensively, not being asked to do more than what he's currently capable of. The other area of his game offensively that does give me kind of some pause for concern, even though the three-point shot, looks good on the numbers, it's a really low release point. It's not quite like a push shot from his chest, but he has an incredibly low release point for his just overall jumper, for especially, again, for his three-point shot. That leads me to be a bit concerned, right? Because it could very easily be blocked at the NBA level. Guys can contest it a lot easier if that jumper's low and in front of his face, rather than being high and above his head at the release point for his jumper. So, definitely some areas to be a little bit concerned about. I do think that, overall the pros for him far outweigh the negatives in his game. Again, I do think there's maybe some decision-making stuff there, at least offensively. I think defensively, the decision-making is pretty solid. The inherent, defensive IQ and awareness and just the defensive instincts jump out at you when you watch him play and you see the success that he's had on that side of the basketball. The offensive instincts need to be a little bit more refined, a little bit more polished. But again, I think he's a guy who he stays in his lane, spot up three-point shooter, attack off closeouts, attack in transition, that kind of thing. He's going to have a lot of success right away at the NBA level just doing those things offensively. So I love Tari Eason. I think he's an incredibly enticing prospect. I think he's the guy that I want the Rockets to pick number 17 overall if he is on the board. But with that, I do want to talk about one more prospect here coming up in just a moment. MarJon Beauchamp, playing for the G League Ignite. We're going to get to him in just a moment after a quick message from our friends over at BetOnline, because BetOnline.net is your number one source for all of your sports betting stats and info. Find the latest sports developments, news, and odds, including this year's finals odds, NHL, hockey, conference finals, Major League Baseball, and of course, the latest fighting news from MMA, UFC, even boxing. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sports wagering information, from live betting, esports, the NBA draft, and more. And speaking of the NBA draft right now, BetOnline has extended their odds for the first round of the NBA draft. Right now, you can take a look at the odds for who the Rockets will select with the third overall pick in the 2022 NBA draft. Paolo Banchero, the odds-on favorite at minus 600 to go number 3 overall in this year's NBA draft. You got Chet Holmgren at plus 1,000, and then Jaden Ivey at plus 1,200. So even Chet Holmgren, a more likely candidate to go number 3 overall than Jaden Ivey. So for all of that and more, head to their website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action available to you. BetOnline, it's where the game starts.